What's up, Michael? What's up, Cannabis fam? Welcome to From In the Weeds to the Clouds. Or is it just the weeds to the clouds? I guess Michael and
Well,
I are
we're still
still,
figuring it out.
yeah. But this session, this podcast really, this is our first session, but it's built for the full industry stack, meaning from the customer to the bud tender, to the buyer, to the ops leads, to the owners, the founders, the haters. Is This is for everybody in that's touched, smoked, thought about weed before. So we're created this format to all of those people. Every role matters. Every decision stacks. We created this format, this podcast here to really pause from the chaos, zoom out for a minute, and lock in on what's actually moving the industry forward.
And not only are we going to move the industry forward, but we're going to just cover what's working and cover where things may not be working. And I think that through that, things are just going to get better, right? And trying to keep it short, simple, not wasting people's time, just real things that we're seeing that's life and going from there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think about it, across all of the markets right now, and markets is an interesting term because I look at it as hyper micro markets, and every store is unique. I've ran two stores on 8 Mile, less than a mile from one another, that behave entirely differently. But when we talk about markets here, defining it like by state market, because that's how the law defines the markets,
Hmm.
I think we're seeing some of the same things. Would you agree?
It's the same story over and over and over, and that's kind of the fun thing to be able to then talk about that story, right? So you're seeing it where it's supply and demand. It's not rocket science, right? It's over time, supply catches up to demand and then passes demand, and then margins get tighter and tighter and tighter. And while that's happening, those customers, they're expecting more and more and more because things are seemingly getting better. So it just makes things tough, right? You expect more and you're earning less in the process. And while all that's happening, more and more people are trying to do the same. So there's still ways that people are coming out on top. And I think that's really the thing to highlight, right? Is while all these troubles are happening, some guys are crushing it. And being able to highlight that is what's going to be fun for me moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We are seeing the margin pressures tightening, customer expectations are rising. What was okay and acceptable and amazing last year, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, um, versus what was acceptable last month and last week is no longer acceptable from an operational standpoint. And when I say no longer acceptable, I mean your business is going to suffer if you don't stay current and visionary and in the future. So there are operators, like you said, that are aligned with from a hierarchy standpoint. You kind of got customer as the top of the hierarchy in my mind. Then it goes to
Agreed.
product. So it's like product, people, and community there. And then you've got processes. And the ones who are getting this right, like that's who's winning. That's the North Star. I think that we didn't get into any sort of personal introductions at the beginning of this, and that might be helpful, but from our different vantage points and viewpoints and perspectives, I think we kind of have a large a good perspective to share, not just from a personal, but we try to. I think Michael and myself, the two Michaels here, I think we're both pretty good at being objective and saying this isn't personal. This is a business, but aside from being a business,
Yep.
it's individualized, and every consumer, and every customer, and every person who's not a consumer yet and not a customer yet, they're each different. They're people, and they're not numbers. And when we start treating people like numbers, it's two things. We get big data, which is great, and we love data. I eat data for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and midnight snack. But you can't
Leftovers
use
too.
yeah, bro. Munchies, munchy data. but, but you can't lose sight of the individual aspect. And those are the relationships that I think, MP on here, I think you bring a great perspective being in your role on the ground, having that unique perspective that me having years and years of experience in this industry and in other similar adjacent industries. I think it's just cool, and that's why we're here today, and we plan to be doing these on a regular basis. And we would love, all the feedback that anybody who's watching or listening to this has to help us make and grow our reach and exposure to educate. I see myself, and I think Michael, you do as the same, and I think largely the industry leaders see themselves as educators, not salespeople. Um, it's about educating. I always tell my bud tenders, I said, you don't need to sell anything. Just be there for these people, interact with them, engage with them, have them be seen. And when they have questions, you can help be the educator because you're the expert. But you can't be the expert if you don't know what you're talking about. And there's a lot of people who thinks they're the expert and don't always have the data to back it up, or don't see the individual personal relationships as the kind of other end of the spectrum from the big data. So here on this, we're going to try to both zoom out and then zoom all the way down into the microscopic view of the true operations. There's no one size fits all formula to winning, and there's different, but there are certain principles that I would say apply everywhere, and that's really what we're here to surface. So Michael, I know I just kind of ranted for a minute, but as far as from the weeds report, what would you say we're hearing across markets, or that you're seeing in your markets? And I don't know if you wanted to say kind of what you do, or if kind of just keep it at that you're in the weeds right now.
Yeah, well, I'm always in the weeds. So that's kind of the day-to-day life being someone that sells weed. I'm a bud tender at a high moving velocity store, lots of weed being sold there. And it's really fun to see that process. And through that process and going to other stores, right? I'm not just a bud tender, I'm also a customer. I go to other stores, I go to other markets. It's really important for me to kind of zoom out, get out of the weeds once in a while, and just kind of see what's actually happening, right? See that process. Talk about that little higher level, like you keep mentioning. Um, with that, there's continuous patterns and things happening over and over where um, it's mentioned a lot on LinkedIn. I love some of the different posts that we're seeing, and I'd love to bring on some of these different people in the future. But it just really stands out to me that some people know their weed and some people don't. And when selling weed, some people have just a different level of not only understanding of the product, but ability to actually sell something, right? It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. It's building that customer experience. It's creating just more than simple in and out. And that process to me is something that some are doing so well and some are just not. And finding ways to just get to that next level, that's what it's all about. Um, and not only on the product side of actually selling it, but on the product side of just having the product. There's a lot of issues with some products, they sell really quick and then you run out of them. Customers, they come in, they don't have the product anymore and they're disappointed by that. Other times you have it where you think you have the product and you don't actually have the product because of different reasons, right? So there's all sorts of things on the back end with inventory that really make it a bear, right? Like the biggest challenge, the biggest struggle that you are fighting in the store most of the time on the back end. Sure, sometimes customers can be annoying, but on the back end, it's the product, it's the inventory that is the challenge. It's just like grocery in so many ways. So I think besides that, I would say just like the overall, I don't have much turnover where I'm at, which I'm really thankful
Mm.
for, but I hear from others that turnover is something that is just a real challenge, and actually getting people ramping up and getting to that point of, where they could actually even sell is a challenge sometimes. So the customer, getting good employees, and the product. Those to me kind of just stand out as things that are always on my mind, in the weeds.
I love that. And what makes it so real to me is I see the same things that you're seeing in the weeds from the clouds. Maybe my cloud is helping to grow your weeds with the sun shining through. I have no idea, but I think you hit on some key points with what's going on in the weeds, right? You talked about kind of out of stocks. Maybe there's a vendor communication issue. Maybe it's a data transmission issue. Maybe it's a personnel issue where we don't have our physical matching our digital and our virtual, or they're in different inventory rooms, so they're not sellable. And we're wondering why something not selling. We got quarter pound of something sitting in the back. You can't sell it from the back. And when I say the back, I mean like it's not even showing on your website because we missed it. Now, these
Exactly.
kind of all interrelated, right? Like if a staff is not clear on the value proposition, they're not clear on the why. The why is so important, I think, because once you understand the why as an inventory manager do you need to have this inventory in the same virtual room as where you physically placed it on the shelves? Well, maybe so that you have something physical that you're looking at, that that it's also virtually available, because sometimes I've seen product being available in the store, like you said, but not really even available for sale to the customer. In other cases, you mentioned out of stocks. Are some of those intentional, do you think? Do you think some vendors are trying to drive hype and then sell through it? Certain strain drops or certain, these are fresh, it's still grocery, and each batch of cucumbers, lettuce, apples is different. Every orange is different, and each harvest is a little bit different. So some of those out of stocks, are they intentional or unintentional? And then does that change by category? When I think about it, I think about like CPG, consumer packaged goods, being edibles, beverage, vape. You're
Bring up
still
a
going to,
good
in your
point.
rosin vapes, you're going to rotate through some new
Yeah.
cycles, new harvests. But other than that, you should have consistent in stock. But you can't have consistent in stock if you haven't even defined your assortment. And I
And
see a lot of stores who haven't even defined their assortment to say which brands are we actually going to carry and stand behind. Who's our real partners? What are the hero items that we really want to feature and focus in our marketing? So it's not just a list of discounts like whole store 30% off, or these are 20, these are 30, these are 40. And that's the only selling point was that THC, the price per THC milligram. I think we're moving on from that. I've seen that in some markets. As consumers do become more educated around what is actually quality product and what is your unique value proposition, because value can mean different things to different people. Somebody might see value in a $50 eighth of some 710 labs or something like that, versus other people might see value in a 4 for $80 of some Michigrown.
the high
Hey, there's some
supply.
value.
Hey.
High supply, you can bang that out
Yeah.
in Illinois real good if they taking it wherever they're taking it. But high supply, that's what is that? That's large format ounce flour mostly from
So it's a popular in my store just for the eighths, cheap eighths.
oh shoot.
So yeah, it's exactly like you're talking about, right? There's a lot of options out there.
And just because it's cheap, does that mean it's bad to you? A
No.
lot of times I've been shopping in dispensaries lately. I haven't bought anything cheap. I probably should buy something cheap just to do some case studies there. But I haven't seen really too much bad product out there. The harvest dates have been fresh. You know, um,
Well, you bring a couple of things up that like got me thinking as far as like first of all, um I want to go back to what you were saying with the being out of stock and that kind of stuff, where I've really been enjoying looking at headset data. And one thing that stands out to me when I look at headset data across multiple states, some of these brands that are really crushing it, they all share something similar that you were talking about as far as feeling like that CPG brand. They're that brand that is never running out of stock. They always have that Wana gummy available. They always have that Kiva or, there's so many, five or six, the Wanas, the Kivas, the
wild,
the
wild.
Wilds, yeah,
And Keith,
the Steezies.
select whoever, Steezy, yeah, Pax,
We could just
who
look at the
Peter,
headset list, right? Just look at the headset
like,
list and they'll tell you.
boom,
But
yeah.
it's that simple where these guys have figured it out and they're able to give that consistency. It's to that next level of what you're talking about. And then you have it where maybe some of those customers, they can only afford once or twice a week or something like that. So then they go for the cheaper product and the cheaper brand and something that they trust, like the High Supply, something that is consistent and is always available and it gives that reliable value that they know they're going to get.
Let me ask you this: what does craft mean to you, and is that a word we should be using in this industry?
I don't really get it. I don't really understand that. To me, it's like kind of a way to try and like just add a margin almost as someone that's on the ground floor. Um, I don't really see like craft mattering. I would want to know like see the actual grow, smell the flower. Just let me smell the flower, then I'll say if it's good weed or not. It's really that simple.
Real talk. That's the realest talk. Let me see it and smell it. I don't care about
Yeah.
the THCs or these total active cannabinoids. I just want to see it and smell it. Okay, we're good. You
So
know?
to be fair, a lot of people do still care about the THC percent.
Yeah,
I
they do.
understand
They
that,
do.
and I won't knock those people that say I need those high THC percentages, and they laugh at me when they say I only got the 25% weed. I want the 30% weed. So, I sorry, I maybe have some infused options for you, or wait,
Yeah.
I can enhance your high. I can give you an edible. Once you take an edible with that 25%, then you'll be good to go.
Well,
So,
how much of this is different depending on somebody looking for an experience versus looking for an effect? And where does that interplay get mixed? Because to me, there's the OG smokers that want that experience. They want flower. They want that sticky, icky, triked out, really amazing, just loud product that they're gonna bring home. They're gonna get out their grinder. They're gonna get out their papers or their wrap, and they're gonna roll up and have a nice session. Maybe it's ritualistic, and they do it once a month on a new
yeah.
moon. But versus, and that's different than just CPG essentially, oftentimes where it's the same thing every single time, but you're not necessarily going for the experience of consuming the cannabis versus the effect resulting from the cannabis. But I think so much of that is related and it's set and setting and intention. Um, but a lot of consumers just don't love the plant the same way we do, and they look for it in almost a medicinal or substance, sin substance of this. Let me get high. Let me get high. Well, guess what? Go to the next market east because their THCs are going to be higher because they understand that you just want high THC. Go to New York and check out those THCs on the non-infused and check out the THCs on the infused and tell me that weed's actually testing higher in these cannabinoids than actual good weed that we have in Michigan or in California. Because what I'm going to tell you right now is all that stuff's outdoor, and it's a little sad to see outdoor from the Hudson Valley getting into the market as premium craft cannabis when actual
Interesting.
craft in my mind is you might have a 1,000-foot grow and it's a micro license, and that's the craft that goes into that. But that craft
Yes.
is the storytelling. That's not the product. That's the branding. That's the marketing, and that's the storytelling. Just like you got craft IPAs. Okay, they might be able to even make more of it with whatever, however you make beer, but it's the marketing message behind the craft. So I think craft is cool when you think about it, but it's like, is 710 Labs craft? It's
I do
fire. Is
no.
craft?
No, I wouldn't
No,
say no. And that's exactly what I was thinking where I just went to Wojo a couple months ago and it felt that exact way that you're talking about where Wojo is just like this small batch. The growers just care so much about what they're doing. They really get it, right? And I wouldn't have called them craft. I just would have called them really good growers,
quality.
right? Quality. Yeah.
Quality and passionate and purpose driven, and a relationship with that plant where there might be specific music playing for each of these girls in the different rooms to help them grow better. You might have
Literally.
some love talks with each of these plants and check-ins with every single girl, and you say, hey baby, you doing great. Oh, you still 5 weeks later, you look a little sick. How are we going to get you better? And that's not going to
It
happen
was
in a
so
really
clean.
quality
It was
home. But like,
so clean.
yeah.
It was the whole facility, like even all the guys with the beards, right? They all have their nets on. And they weren't it's not like they're planning on seeing me, right? Like that's just the way they do it. They're
Yeah.
just that next level. So it's stuff like that that just makes you realize some guys are taking, we need to talk about those kind of good things, right? That's why we're here.
What do you think about, just shifting gears a little bit, just the how promotional the industry is and what that looks like different by state, by region within a state or city, municipality or block, or, who's doing what out there, and what's the vision or the strategy behind a lot of these promotions? Are they happening as a result of not having a vision and not having a strategy and saying, oh shit, we got to course correct because this is not where we should be? But did you even plan where you should be from the get-go, and that's why you're running the promos, and that's not where you should be? Or did you get backed into it because homie down the street 4 miles away is running an aggressive promo that you have no idea why or how they're doing it, and what kind of profitability metrics and what kind of consumer satisfaction you're really getting out of that promo? Or are you just devaluing brands because you bought too much because you wanted some buying power that you were going to get it for a better price, and now you've effed the industry by doing some dirty?
Some people don't like Jeter. I want to tell you from a marketing perspective why Jeter is doing some things right. And it's fascinating to me as being on the ground and just seeing it, right? Because people always say, oh, the product is trash, or, all these different, you can say what you want. But I'm going to tell you on the ground what I see because I'm excited about event coming up. I'm going to a Jeter promotion where all of the people that are bud tenders in West Michigan, it's a big event. It's going to be like over 100, 150 people.
Yeah.
And they just do a really good job hosting it, right? They have full-time Jeter employees that are out in the market, that are hawking their products, that are connecting with the bud tenders, that you just see real people. And when you're then selling those products later, you're not just selling the product, you're selling those reps, right? Those good relationships that you've built. And that's something that a lot of brands just can't afford, right? Like it's really tough when you're dealing against these brands that are like huge. But there's still ways to do it, right? If you look at headset, you're going to see some of these brands that they have like zero sales, or sorry, zero marketing, but they have really high sales, right? So there's these small guys that are able to compete. But I do just want to highlight how the big guys are doing it right and doing it like Jeter, where it's intentional. It's not just throwing away money. They're not just throwing hats at people, right? They're not just throwing away free product. It's an experience. It's something that builds long-term memories and relationships.
You nailed it just now with that last sentence. You said it's experience that builds long-term memories, that builds relationships, and that's just like any other retailer product. And it doesn't need to be something that's orally or consumable. It could be a t-shirt, a hat.
Hey,
That's the
the
experience.
t-shirt. I'm
Yeah.
proud to rep it because I think it's a good brand. That's all it is.
And you think it's a good brand because what? Because they've got consistent supply, consistent pricing, consistent product, and good in stocks and good vendor relations, and they bill you the right time, and you pay them the right amount, and everything just kind of works.
All that. I mean, I'm just a bud tender, so I can't say as far as some of those vendor relationship things go. But I know that I have it every single week in my store, right? And I know how to sell it. I just feel confident with it, and it's just something that is comfortable to me.
The
And
consistency has given you
yes,
confidence and comfortable because you now can stand behind something that says, bro, I got Diet Coke in my store. I'm going to have Diet Coke every single day. And I'll always have this Diet Coke and this Coca-Cola and this Sprite. And guess what? We got a new flavor in here. It's called Orange Creamsicle Coca-Cola. And it's here for the summer unlimited edition only. And that's what Jeter's doing is they have an operation. They have SOPs. But they haven't lost themselves from the culture. This is where
yes,
I love Jeter. Is not somebody who's going to go buy the Jeters and come home and smoke them up. But as much as I love the people that work there and I love their business and their marketing and their branding. And when you talked about experience, I talked about experience before, kind of how the OG wants to get that flower, go home, feel it on their hands, roll it up, and have some sort of ritual. That's an experience. Also got this experience, which is a branded experience with elements. And I remember I was running Knox in Grand Rapids, and Cookies in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we had Jeter Mart. And Jeter came out and they set up a whole damn 7-Eleven setup in the store.
That's
Steezy
awesome.
does a real good job activating stuff too with their vendor days. Wild is incredible from a consistency of product, but it all comes back to the same thing when I look at all these companies. It's the people. It's the
Yep.
people who's doing it. It's the people who's running it. It's honest people. It's good people. It's transparent people. And there's no
Yep.
BS. When you don't have that, how can I trust you? I don't care how good your product is. If I can't trust you because you don't have your shit together or
It's
you're
that
not being
simple.
honest about it, I can't play that. You got to have your shit together for me to do business with you.
And
What would you say? You know, you talked about turnover a little bit.
mm-hmm.
Why is the turnover so high? Is it, oh, I can go make $2 more down the street? Well, do you know what kind of product discount do you get? Do you know what kind of team you're working with? Do you know what that upward mobility, your career opportunities look like? Or are you just going for $1 or two when really that's kind of when you're a little short-sighted? Unless you're just not happy in your role, you don't like your manager. Is that the main reason people don't like their manager? That's generally what turnover happens with in many other industries. And if that's the case, is it because the manager shouldn't be in that role? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're asking all the right questions, and the only answer that I can really give is that retail is a grind, right? Like actually doing it, being on that ground floor every day, it's tough. There's days where you don't want to do it as much as I love selling weed every day, right? So, um, to your point, management is just so key. Like you can see other benefits to go other places, but at the end of the day, if you feel taken care of, if you feel valued, that's all that really matters. And that's tough to have long term in a lot of retail settings because a lot of these really good people, they're going to go on and do other things, right? So it goes back to that turnover, what you're saying, where sometimes like you lose good people to go on to other places because it's not the bad people that are constantly leaving. Maybe sometimes it's the good people that are leaving too. It's just retail's
What
tough.
is management then, right at the end of the day? And I'm not talking about store management. I'm talking about corporate management, ownership, operators. So like we're talking about trying to patch things up, and maybe you're okay with your turnover because you can get more employees at the same rate, but there's an onboarding cost. That's a very expensive.
Yes.
This
Yes.
cost of turnover is not worth it. Pay these people a few more dollars to get the best people and reward them because you're going to see that ROI. The biggest problem I see in the industry is people looking at owners and operators looking at certain opportunities as costs or line item expenses rather than investments. And when you invest in your inventory, invest in your
Priceless.
people, you're going to be able to sell a lot of weed and your margins are going to be there. But when you're trying to cheap out on everything because you're looking at it as a cost line item, you're doing yourself a major disservice. And I'm not saying to just pay just to pay, but you can find the good people, the right partners, but honor that relationship. Don't devalue what they're providing to you. This is where I see a lot of issues as it relates to strategic partnerships and brands and retailers, to the the GMs, the bud tenders, to the customer, just incongruencies, inconsistencies with the quality relationships, and just kind of like, let's just flip this weight and get this money. And that transaction ship mindset is going to kill you long term. Real talk. If you don't start running a real business with honesty and being a good business partner, you're not going to be here in 5 years. I don't care how much money you have right now.
No. What stands out to me is looking at other big leaders and what they're recently doing, right? So Walmart, they in the last couple, I would maybe it was 3, 4, 5 months ago, but they made a huge push to better incentivize their middle management, their GMs. They
Yeah.
like 30, 40% salary increase, something like that.
Boom, that's
So
what I'm saying. So pay your GMs more so that you don't have your bud tenders cycling through and leaving. And by the way, pay them a little bit more too, because you're going to be selling so much more weed if you pay the people the right amount.
yeah, but it was so smart by Walmart. Like the guys that are grinding in those tough environments that Like they don't want to replace, right? The people that you don't want to replace, make it so that they don't get replaced, right? Like it really comes down to being that simple.
Yeah, one thing I've learned is everybody's replaceable, and
Oh,
it's
that's
just
true. That's true too.
short-sightedness oftentimes when there's replacements coming into play. You're going to put in who's a backup quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes? I don't know. Is Mahomes replaceable? Because that's what if you got a Mahomes on your squad, pay that man. Pay that man. Because there's no substitutes for the Tom Brady's, the Patrick Mahomes is. You can throw a Jared Goff in there, but he needs some talent around him. There's quality people, but you're asking your whole organization to now carry your leader rather than the reverse of that.
And the thing with people being replaceable is that's an ideal world if the processes are set up, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can have this idea where one person will be able to do what someone else can do, but if that person doesn't know the history, the background, and nothing has been set up properly for them to succeed, that's how things fail. It's when things are not set up for success.
I agree. The putting in some SOPs, some standard operating procedures. Coming from Weedland, we don't like organization. We don't
That's
we
the
like to
thing.
be, kind of go by the feel. And that's fun. That's great. But this is a business. You got to treat it like a business,
Yeah.
Well,
At the
I
end
know
of the day.
we stayed on that for a little bit, but my goal here is let's stop patching up these symptoms. Let's find the root cause identifier and let's all look in the mirror and see how can we do better and what does that really mean? And let's not be so short-sighted about our investments and seeing them as cost line items or expenses. That's just a poor form of budgeting and running a business if you're going to run that route. I did want to shift gears a little bit and just talk about from the clouds, kind of where we're going. What do you see? What is success? How do you define success?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, you could just look at the red versus the green, right? I mean, that's the way that some people do it. To me, the question is the short versus the long form, right? Where you're seeing so many people try and just get the quick little success and just take the fast route. And I think cannabis right now, it's all about looking for that longer game and playing for the longer game. So success isn't just a quick flip. It's setting
Wow.
the team up for success, setting up those processes like we were talking about before, finding the formula that's going to allow you to win over and over and over, and just copy and paste that equation over and over and over, and doing it and scaling it and making it bigger and bigger and bigger. That to me in cannabis is what success is right now.
So find your formula and then rinse and repeat. But
That's
that formula is not always perfect, right? We're still augmenting and making updates and changes and continuous improvement cycles from an operation standpoint. So we might have an SOP, but when the SOP is in place and we're doing it, are we also looking at it and saying, how can we make this better? Are we listening to our bartenders and their
That's the
feedback?
challenge. So you're right. So the challenge with cannabis is how fast things are constantly changing it. Like we can make a formula, but that formula is going to constantly be changing because of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I mean, to me, I think that when we talk about the weeds to the clouds, from in the weeds to the clouds, we've kind of been in both in the weeds and in the clouds on our conversation, and that's the goal here of the podcast. But from the clouds, I think you just said it. Let's stop chasing the fire of the week. Let's build systems that win. Put them on autopilot. That's not just for executives. That's for anybody who touches the plant. If you're a bud tender, what does your script look like? And it's not a
Yes.
script. It's a, hey, how are you doing today? How can I help you? And then you can get into it. But don't ask these people what their budget is. What are you doing? You just killed yourself, you know?
Yeah. You're
And the
right.
same thing all the way from the executives. What is your 5-year plan? What is your 3-year plan? What is your 2-year plan? What's your 1-year? What's your quarterly strategy? What's your monthly strategy? Are you changing it by week? And are you flipping out today because yesterday you missed sales forecast that you never even actually had a forecast for by 10%? Just stay the course. Once you get this is a big ship. This is the most monumental cruise ship bark. I don't know what the word for a boat is. Bark.
Barge, is that what you like
Barge. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just going.
The Titanic,
You
man.
can't speedboat this shit. You're just like now telling people to row harder, row harder, row harder. Your boat's not changing direction. You're just burning people out when you start doing that kind of stuff.
You're right.
But organizational change, man, that's not easy. It's not easy. When you have 2 stores, 5 stores, 10 stores, 30 stores, how do you drive organizational change? And should it come from the top? Should it come from the bottom? How is it developed? And it's interesting to bring in sometimes some coaches to larger companies who need a
Definitely.
little bit of a different viewpoint than just that internal. Here's what we're doing every day, and we know that it works and is doing great. Well, is it working as well as it could and should? Are you shortchanging yourself because your opportunity is a lot bigger and you don't have vision to your blind spots? So it's always nice to kind of have some outside perspectives come in and share their viewpoint as well, I find.
Definitely.
What about some wins? What we should do, rinse and repeat here. What's working across that you're seeing that is that rinse and repeat formula that you're kind of referenced there? What's doing? Are we doing? Are stores getting reorders through data and vendor managed inventory? Is there alignment in goals and strategies where vendors willing to take a retailer on a consignment model because they're the ones that should be selling their own product, and at the end of the month they should get compensated for what actually sold instead of selling it into a retailer and saying it's your job to sell our product? I look at retail as a house and our customers as guests.
Hmm.
And when we're in there, we're the guides and the educators, but don't make me sell your product. You come in here and do your vendor days. You do your social media. You target your customer and tell them they can get it at my store. And I got you because you've educated the bud tenders on what these quality products are. And if you haven't done your bud tender education, they're being educated by knowing that you didn't do a bud tender education. They're being educated by knowing that you don't have consistent in stocks. They're being educated by knowing that you don't show brand support and that you're not investing in selling your own products in my house. It's a food court. So I would say, what data is a big one. I love data. Education to customers, vendors supporting it. I just kind of mentioned that, but if it's working, if it's working, it's good, right? And if it's not working, what do we do? How do we make these things better? How do we address some of these pain points? I guess that's my question to you from in the weeds. What kind of opportunities do we have to be better?
Well, I think a lot of times it is just pretty practical, right? Like, does it work or does it not work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's I see it more simplistically being on that down level, downstream at the end, right? Where sometimes things get implemented and it doesn't make sense. And when you practically do it, pretty quickly it's like you kind of just grinning and you're like, this just doesn't make sense. And fortunately, the organization that I work at, they really are aware of that, right? Like things that work, they stick. Things that stick, they are then cemented, and then you build on that. That cement is then a floor that is built up.
Yeah.
And those things that don't work, you just have to move on, right? Like that's the thing in cannabis. Sometimes I'm really bad at that. That nothing's perfect, and we are going to collectively get better with understanding that sometimes things won't go right. That's just life.
How do you know if something's working? Do you have a benchmark that you set out and expectations? And is there a reason that things are being implemented? What's the why? And is the why being communicated throughout the organization? And if it's not, we probably know why it's not working.
That's such a good point. One thing that really stuck out to me was a while ago with how we brought in customers into our into the sales floor area, where when I was a customer, it often felt like that I would see other customers, they would leave, right? So, or sorry, they would get put in the back before me. So that didn't really feel fair to me. So
Yeah.
we switched our system up, and now it became super fair. So it's exactly like you said with those bud tenders, where they saw the why and we made it happen and things improved. And that's what it's all about, right? Is seeing those improvements happen.
Yeah. I know we had some more content we wanted to get through on this inaugural cast, but
Let's
I got
keep it in the weeds, keep it short, man.
yeah, we got to wrap this one. So weeds to the clouds. It's a cycle. You can't live in either one forever, but if you never zoom out, you're gonna burn
I like
out.
that.
I think that if you stay too high, you ain't got nowhere to fly. Like you can keep flying higher, but we got to remember what we're built on. And your cement, well, we don't want to cement some shit if we think that is good cement. But if we've got an opportunity to make something a higher floor, like how do we know? You're taking steps, but how do you know that your steps you're
You're
taking big enough
totally
steps?
right. It can't just be feels. It goes to back to your point. There needs to be benchmarks. There needs to be ways to actually go back to, oh, this is better. This feels better. No, it's we used to have 8 people take 6 minutes. Now it's 3 people take
Yes,
4 minutes kind of stuff,
yes.
right? That's what it comes back to.
So quality, efficiencies, supply chain, economies. I think at the end of the day, both you and I see kind of eye to eye on this is data, this is analytics, this is probability statistics, this is economics. And the second we try to conflate that into saying, well, weed is different than something else because it's wheat. No,
We all sell the
it's
same shit.
economics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I got to wrap.
It's been great.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this on a regular basis and seeing where we can, from what kind of weeds we get in and what kind of clouds we're in.
And I'd love to bring maybe other people on in the future, so or talk about other brands, that kind of stuff. So this
Love
really is
that.
just the beginning, and I'm excited to do more of this. So I don't know as far as like a send off of like till next time or that kind of stuff, but you know, you tell me.
We'll have to come up with our send off because we'll have to come up with an intro and a send off
Yeah,
because this has been organized chaos.
yeah, there we go. I like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
all
we're
right,
out.
Michael. I appreciate you. We out.
Boom.
Boom.